The hospital cafeteria smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant when Daniel first saw her sitting alone in the corner booth. She was crying quietly into her hands while an untouched sandwich sat wrapped on the table before her. He had seen plenty of tears in his 3 years working as a hospital facilities coordinator, but something about this woman's grief felt different. It looked like the kind of pain that comes when you realize you are completely alone in the world. Daniel had no idea that in less than an hour he would ask this stranger to marry him, and that her answer would change both their lives forever. Daniel grabbed his usual turkey sandwich and coffee. He tried not to stare, but his eyes kept drifting back to her. She was maybe 30 years old with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her clothes looked like she had been wearing them for days. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red and hollow. That is when he noticed the visitor badge clipped to her shirt. Same floor as the ICU. His heart sank a little. Nothing good ever came from that floor. He was about to mind his own business when he heard her phone ring. She answered it with a shaky hello. Then her whole body seemed to collapse inward. Daniel could hear the angry voice on the other end even from where he sat. The woman whose name he would soon learn was Alina kept saying, "I understand, and I know, and I am so sorry." When she hung up, she put her head down on the table, and her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Daniel is not the type to approach strangers. His ex-wife used to tell him he was too reserved, too cautious with his heart. But something made him stand up and walk over to that booth. Maybe it was because he knew what rock bottom looked like. He had been there himself 2 years ago, when his marriage ended and his father died within the same month. Maybe it was because he was tired of playing it safe in a life that felt increasingly empty. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Are you okay?" She looked up at him with startled eyes. "No," she said simply. "I am really not." Daniel slid into the booth across from her without asking permission. "Do you want to talk about it?" And somehow she did. The words came pouring out like a dam had broken. Her name was Elena Vasquez. 3 days ago, her older brother Miguel had collapsed at work. Massive stroke. He was upstairs in the ICU on life support. Miguel was only 35 years old. He had raised Elena since she was 12 after their parents died in a car accident. He was her only family, her everything. But that was not why she was crying in the cafeteria. The phone call had been from the hospital billing department. Elena had no insurance and Miguel's insurance had lapsed 2 months ago when he was between jobs. The hospital wanted a $50,000 deposit to continue treatment. Without it, they would move him to a county facility within 24 hours. The county hospital was overwhelmed and understaffed. Miguel would not survive the transfer, let alone receive the specialized care he needed. "I have $300 in my bank account," Elena said. "I called everyone I know. I tried to set up one of those fundraising pages, but who is going to donate $50,000 to a stranger in 24 hours? She laughed bitterly. "I am going to lose him. The only person who ever stayed." Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. He thought about his own father, about holding his hand in a different hospital room. He thought about having resources and insurance and still feeling helpless. He could not imagine facing that moment completely alone and without options. "What if you were not a stranger?" he heard himself say. Elena looked confused. "What?" "To the insurance company. What if you had coverage?" "I do not understand." Daniel took a breath. His heart was hammering. "I work here. I have excellent health insurance through the hospital. Family coverage. If we were married, you would be on my policy immediately. It covers dependents and spouses. Your brother would be your dependent." Elena stared at him like he had started speaking another language. "You are insane." "Maybe. But I am serious. You do not even know me. I know you are scared. I know you love your brother. I know you need help and I can help. Why would you do this?" Daniel thought about that question. He thought about his empty apartment and his quiet life, and how he had spent 2 years playing it safe because taking risks had hurt so badly. He thought about his father telling him in that hospital bed that the only thing we take with us is the love we gave away. "Because somebody should," he said. "Because I can. Because maybe this is why I was in this cafeteria today." Elena shook her head. "This is crazy. You could get in trouble. Insurance fraud or something. We would actually be married. Legal marriage license and everything. After your brother recovers, we can get it annulled." "No fraud. Just unusual circumstances." They sat in silence for a long moment. Daniel could see her mind working through the impossibility of it, weighing her options. Finally, she looked up at him. "Why do you really want to do this?" Daniel met her eyes. "Because my dad died and I had every resource in the world and I still could not save him. But maybe I can help save your brother. Maybe that means something." Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks again, but different tears this time. Okay, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. They were married 4 hours later at the county clerk's office. Daniel's coworker Sarah served as their witness. Alina wore the same rumpled clothes from the cafeteria. Daniel wore his work khakis and a button-up shirt. There were no flowers, no music, no guests. When the clerk asked if Alina took Daniel to be her lawfully wedded husband, she said I do, and her voice cracked with emotion. When they kissed awkwardly to seal the marriage, Alina whispered thank you against his cheek. The insurance processed by the next morning. Miguel was approved for continued care. Elena sat by his bedside while Daniel brought her coffee and sandwiches. He found himself staying at the hospital long after his shifts ended. He would sit with Elena in the waiting room during Miguel's surgeries. He held her hand when the doctors delivered bad news. He celebrated with her when Miguel opened his eyes for the first time. Somewhere in those long hospital days, something unexpected happened. They started talking about more than just Miguel's condition. Elena told him about growing up in El Paso, about how Miguel worked 2 jobs to keep her in school, about her dream of becoming a teacher. Daniel told her about his divorce, about his father, about how he had been sleepwalking through his life for 2 years. One night, 3 weeks after their wedding, Miguel was sleeping peacefully and Elena turned to Daniel in the dim hospital room. You saved his life, she said. You saved me. Daniel shook his head. I just signed some papers. No, you saw me. When I was invisible and alone, you saw me. That is a different kind of saving. Miguel recovered slowly but steadily. 2 months after the wedding, he was moved out of ICU. 3 months and he was transferred to rehabilitation. The doctor said it was remarkable. Elena said it was a miracle. Daniel thought maybe it was both. During Miguel's recovery, something else grew between Daniel and Elena. It started as friendship, as gratitude. But it became something deeper. They started meeting for coffee on days when Daniel was not working. Elena would text him funny stories from Miguel's physical therapy sessions. Daniel found himself thinking about her constantly. One evening, 6 months after their courthouse wedding, Daniel and Elena sat on a bench outside the hospital watching the sunset. Miguel was being discharged the next day. He would move in with Elena and continue outpatient therapy. So Elena said, I guess we should talk about the annulment. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Right, the annulment. They sat in silence for a moment. What if we did not? Elena said quietly. Get an annulment, I mean. Daniel looked at her. What? This started as a rescue. You saved us. But somewhere along the way, this became real for me. You became real. I know this is crazy. I know this is not how it is supposed to work. But I fell in love with you, Daniel. Not because you married me, but because of who you are. Because you show up. Because you stay. Daniel felt tears in his eyes. He reached over and took her hand. I fell in love with you too. I thought I was saving you, but you saved me right back. You reminded me what it feels like to matter to someone. To have someone actually see you. They kissed there on that bench as the sun set over the hospital where they met. This time it was not awkward. This time it was everything. Miguel cried when they told him they were staying married. He pulled Daniel into a fierce hug and said, you are my brother now. For real. Daniel and Elena renewed their vows 1 year later with Miguel as best man. This time there were flowers and music and friends. This time Elena wore a white dress and Daniel wore a suit. This time when they said I do, everybody cheered. That is the thing about kindness. Sometimes we think it only flows one direction. We think we save someone or they save us. But real kindness, real love works differently. It circles back and multiplies. Daniel thought he was rescuing a stranger in a hospital cafeteria. But Elena rescued him right back from a life half, lived from a heart half open. Sometimes the craziest, most impossible choice turns out to be the one that saves us all. Sometimes a stranger becomes family. Sometimes saying yes to helping someone else is really saying yes to your own life. Daniel and Elena learned that the hard way and the beautiful way in that hospital cafeteria, when one man decided that somebody should help and one woman decided to trust. If this story touched your heart, we would love for you to hit that like button. Subscribe to Kindify Stories for more true tales of human kindness that remind us what really matters. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that we are never truly alone, and that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories start with the simplest act of seeing another person's pain and choosing to help. Because at the end of the day, we are all just looking for someone who will show up and stay. Thank you for being part of our Kindify community. See you in the next story.